Virgo, January 2026. Master your precision and release perfectionism. Virgo, January 2026 is your month to transform perfectionism into excellence, anxiety into discernment, and critical analysis into compassionate wisdom. Forget everything you've been told about needing to be perfect before you're worthy. This isn't about lowering your standards or becoming sloppy. This is about recognizing that your incredible attention to detail is a gift when it serves creation, not a prison when it prevents starting. We're talking about the kind of month where your analytical brilliance doesn't just spot problems, it creates elegant solutions. Where your high standards don't just paralyze you with self-criticism, they guide you toward genuine mastery. Where your desire to be helpful doesn't deplete you through endless service, it comes from overflow and is genuinely appreciated. Where your mind's constant analysis finds peace without losing its sharpness. Imagine waking up every morning feeling capable, competent, and worthy exactly as you are, not after you've fixed everything about yourself, but right now. Imagine your exceptional organizational abilities and attention to detail being celebrated rather than taken for granted. Imagine creating and sharing your work without agonizing over every tiny flaw. Imagine helping others because it brings you joy, not because you're desperately trying to earn worth through usefulness. Imagine your mind being sharp and analytical without the constant background noise of anxiety and self-criticism. Imagine feeling good enough, truly good enough, for the first time in your life. But here's the raw truth most astrologers won't say directly: your greatest gifts are also your potential prison. That incredible precision and attention to detail. It becomes paralysis when you can't start anything until conditions are perfect. That high standard and quality orientation. It becomes cruel perfectionism that tells you nothing you do is ever quite good enough. That analytical mind. It becomes anxiety when it's constantly scanning for what's wrong, what could go wrong, or what you're doing wrong. That desire to be useful and help others. It becomes compulsive service where you give until you're depleted, then resent people for taking what you offered. That practicality and realism. It becomes pessimism that sees only problems, never possibilities. Your humility, that quiet competence that doesn't need recognition, becomes invisibility where your considerable contributions go unacknowledged and unappreciated. January 2026 isn't asking you to become someone you're not. You'll never be the person who's comfortable with chaos, who doesn't notice details, who's satisfied with mediocrity, or who doesn't care about quality and precision. That's not your nature and doesn't need to be. But this month is asking you hard questions. Can you distinguish between excellence and perfectionism? Can you create without needing it to be flawless? Can you analyze problems without drowning in anxiety? Can you help others without losing yourself? Can you appreciate what's working instead of only seeing what needs fixing? Can you recognize your own worth instead of trying to earn it through perfect performance? This month is testing whether you've matured enough to use your gifts skillfully rather than being controlled by their shadow sides. Whether you can be precise without being perfectionist, analytical without being anxious, helpful without being self-sacrificing, humble without being invisible, quality-oriented without being self-critical. Stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal will show you how to navigate January's potent energy in ways that honor your Virgo nature while also liberating you from the perfectionism prison. By February 1st, you won't just analyze problems, you'll implement solutions. You won't just see flaws, you'll also see beauty and progress. You won't just serve others, you'll serve yourself with equal care. You won't just work hard, you'll work smart and allow yourself rest. You won't just be competent, you'll know you're competent and let yourself be seen and appreciated. The cosmic setup, why January 2026 is engineered for Virgo's liberation. Let me be crystal clear. January 2026 isn't just another month of hard work and self-improvement for Virgo. This is a rare cosmic alignment where Mercury, your ruling planet, moves through positions that simultaneously sharpen your analytical gifts while loosening the grip of perfectionism and anxiety that usually accompany them. Mercury begins January in Capricorn, fellow Earth sign energy that understands your practical, results-oriented nature. But Capricorn brings something you often lack: the ability to complete and deliver work that's good enough even when it's not perfect. Capricorn understands that done and delivered beats perfect but never finished. This energy teaches you that completion is its own form of excellence. Early January's Capricorn influence asks, what have you actually finished and delivered? Not what you've worked on meticulously but never shared because it wasn't quite perfect enough. Not what you've planned down to the last detail but never started because conditions weren't ideal, but what have you actually completed and put out into the world. This accountability might sting because Virgo often has impressive work in progress but disappointing completion rate. Perfectionism prevents finishing because finishing means being seen and potentially judged. At around January 20th, Mercury moves into Aquarius, which brings fresh perspective and innovation to your analytical mind. Aquarius asks you to zoom out from obsessive detail focus and see bigger patterns and possibilities. It encourages experimentation without attachment to perfect outcomes. It reminds you that innovation requires trying things that might not work, making mistakes, and learning through imperfect action rather than perfect planning. Venus dances through January in positions that soften your critical edges and help you appreciate beauty, pleasure, and connection, things Virgo often sacrifices in pursuit of productivity and perfection. Venus asks, when did you last do something purely for joy, not because it was productive or improving? When did you last appreciate yourself instead of focusing on what still needs fixing? Mars is teaching you about sustainable effort and energy management. Virgo tends to work relentlessly until breakdown, ignoring body signals and running on anxiety rather than genuine energy. January shows you that strategic rest and recovery actually increase productivity and quality more than pushing through exhaustion. Saturn continues teaching you about communication, boundaries, and valuing your own time and expertise. You've been learning that saying no to demands on your time isn't selfish. It's necessary for maintaining the energy and space needed for your best work. That charging appropriately for your skills isn't greedy, it's recognizing your value. Jupiter is expanding your home, health, and daily routine sectors. This means opportunities to create more peaceful living space, establish genuinely nourishing health practices, and design daily rhythms that support well-being rather than just productivity. Jupiter asks you to recognize that self-care isn't selfish laziness. It's the foundation that enables everything else. Pluto has recently moved into Aquarius, beginning long-term transformation of your work, health, and service sectors. This influence unfolds over years, but January 2026 is when you first feel the shift. Your understanding of what healthy service looks like, how to work sustainably, and what actually contributes to well-being is ready to evolve beyond old patterns of perfectionism and compulsive doing. The cosmic conditions are perfectly aligned to liberate you from perfectionism while enhancing your genuine gifts. The question is, are you ready to be good enough rather than endlessly pursuing impossible perfection? January 1st to 10th. Honest assessment and compassionate inventory. The first 10 days of January are perfectly designed for Virgo's analytical nature. This is assessment and planning season. But January 2026 version has a twist. The assessment needs to be compassionate rather than critical. You're looking at patterns and creating plans from self-acceptance rather than self-punishment. Use these first 10 days for honest yet kind self-examination and creating realistic, sustainable systems. The perfectionism audit. For 3 days, track every time perfectionism shows up, refusing to start something because conditions aren't ideal, abandoning projects because they're not turning out perfectly, spending excessive time on minor details while important projects go unfinished, criticizing yourself harshly for small mistakes, hiding your work because it's not flawless, or feeling anxious about being seen or judged. You'll probably be shocked by how much perfectionism controls your life. This isn't character flaw. It's learned behavior based on believing your worth depends on perfect performance. But it's costing you unfinished projects, hidden talents, exhaustion from impossible standards, anxiety from constant self-monitoring, and missed opportunities because you won't move until everything is perfect. Identify your top 3 perfectionism patterns. These become your focus for change this month. The completion inventory. List everything you've started but not finished in the past year. Be thorough. Creative projects, learning pursuits, home improvements, career goals, health initiatives, relationship repairs. Everything you began with intention and enthusiasm but abandoned incomplete. Virgo often has numerous works in progress but few completions because perfectionism prevents finishing. You keep working, tweaking, improving, but never actually declaring something done and sharing it. Now choose 1 to 3 items from this list that you'll commit to completing this month. Not perfectly, just done to good enough standard and actually delivered, shared, implemented. This builds the muscle of completion that Virgo desperately needs. The worth audit. Where do you believe your worth comes from? Be brutally honest. Is it conditional on being productive, being useful, being perfect, being needed, fixing everything, never making mistakes, always having answers, or never being a burden. Conditional worth is exhausting because you can never rest, never be imperfect, never have needs. Your worth has to be constantly earned and maintained through flawless performance. Journal about, what if your worth is inherent? What if you're valuable simply because you exist, not because of what you do or how well you do it? What if you could make mistakes, rest, need help, and still be worthy? This feels impossible to Virgo, but it's truth you need to internalize. The Anxiety Patterns Assessment. Virgo's analytical mind often manifests as anxiety, constantly scanning for problems, catastrophizing about what could go wrong, replaying social interactions looking for mistakes, worrying about others' judgments, or feeling chronic low-level dread. Track your anxiety for a week. When does it spike? What triggers it? What patterns emerge? Often anxiety peaks when facing potential judgment or criticism, starting something new where outcomes are uncertain, situations where you can't control everything, or when you've made even small mistakes. With this awareness, you can start working with anxiety rather than being controlled by it. Recognize that anxiety isn't accurate risk assessment. It's your mind trying to protect you by predicting and preparing for every possible problem. This was helpful evolutionarily, but now it just prevents living. The service audit. List everyone you help and how you help them. Then honestly assess, is this reciprocal? Do they appreciate it? Do they take you for granted? Are you helping because it genuinely serves you too, or because you're trying to earn worth through usefulness? Do you resent the helping even as you do it? Virgo often becomes the one everyone dumps on, the person who solves problems, handles details, cleans up messes, remembers everything, and keeps things running smoothly. This feels good to your need to be useful, but it's often thankless and depleting. Identify which helping is genuine mutual exchange and which is one-sided drain. You don't have to stop helping yet, just see clearly what's actually happening. The Health and Routine Assessment. How are you actually treating your body and managing your energy? Virgo often pushes physical limits, ignores body signals, survives on anxiety rather than rest, and maintains punishing routines in pursuit of productivity or perfection. Assess honestly sleep quality and quantity, eating patterns, movement and exercise, stress levels, health issues you're ignoring, energy throughout the day, and whether your routines support or drain you. Virgo Paradox. You're the sign of health and wellness, yet you often neglect your own well-being while obsessing about perfect diet, exercise, or routines. You know what's healthy theoretically but don't always apply it to yourself. The Hidden Talents Inventory. What skills, knowledge, or capabilities do you have that others don't know about because you hide them? Virgo often keeps talents private out of fear they are not good enough to share, or out of humility that tips into invisibility. List your actual skills and accomplishments. Be thorough and honest. Include everything you can do competently even if you don't think it's impressive. You'll probably be surprised by how capable you actually are. Virgo tends to minimize own abilities while overestimating others. This list becomes evidence against your inner critic when it tells you you're not good enough. The Environment Assessment. Look at your living and working spaces. Virgo often creates either obsessively organized spaces that require constant maintenance or chaotic spaces that create anxiety. Assess. Does your environment support your well-being and productivity? Or does it drain energy through clutter, disorder, or perfectionist maintenance demands? Create plan for making your space genuinely functional and peaceful without requiring perfect maintenance. By January 10th, you should have awareness of perfectionism patterns, identified projects to complete, begun examining conditional worth beliefs, understood anxiety triggers, clarity about service reciprocity, honest health assessment, recognition of hidden talents, and plan for functional environment. This compassionate awareness creates foundation for actual change. January 11 to 20. Imperfect action and strategic completion around January 13th to 15th. The energy shifts from analysis to action. This is when you move from thinking about change to actually implementing it. For Virgo, this is simultaneously exciting and terrifying. Action means potential mistakes, imperfection, and being seen before you're ready. Mid-January asks you to take imperfect action anyway. To start before you're perfectly prepared. To share before work is flawless. To be visible before you've fixed everything about yourself. This is growth edge for Virgo. The Completion Challenge. Remember those 1 to 3 projects you identified early month? Now you actually complete them. Not perfect them, complete them to good enough standard and share them. That this requires defining good enough, which is hard for Virgo. Good enough means serves the intended purpose, meets reasonable quality standards, is complete enough to be functional or comprehensible, and is better done and shared than perfect but hidden. When perfectionism says it's not ready, ask, will waiting make meaningful improvement, or am I just avoiding potential judgment? If the latter, share it, and sharing imperfect work is terrifying but liberating. You discover that the flaws you obsessed about, others don't even notice. People appreciate and benefit from your work despite imperfections. Nothing catastrophic happens when you're not perfect. Your worth doesn't evaporate when you make mistakes. At the visibility practice, Virgo often works behind scenes, preferring contribution without recognition. But invisibility means your considerable value goes unacknowledged and you don't get opportunities you deserve. Mid-January, practice visibility. Speak up in meetings with your ideas and insights. Share your work publicly. Take credit for contributions instead of deflecting. Ask for recognition you deserve. Put your name on your work, and let people know what you're capable of. This feels like bragging or attention-seeking to humble Virgo. It's not. It's appropriate self-advocacy. You can be humble about abilities while still making them known. The imperfection experiment. Deliberately do something imperfectly. Maybe that's sending email without triple-checking, leaving house with slightly messy hair, posting photo without editing, submitting work at 85% instead of 100%, or trying new activity you're not good at. Choose something relatively low stakes and intentionally do it imperfectly. Notice what happens. Probably nothing catastrophic. People don't reject you. Your worth doesn't evaporate. You survive being less than perfect. Repeat this regularly until anxiety about imperfection decreases. You're retraining your nervous system to recognize that imperfection is safe. At the boundary implementation, remember the service audit from early month? Now implement boundaries around unhealthy helping. This might mean saying no to unreasonable requests, not jumping in to fix others' problems they could solve themselves, declining to be everyone's therapist, or simply not being available 24/7 for everyone's needs. You'll feel guilty. Guilty saying no, guilty not helping, guilty prioritizing yourself, guilty letting people down. Feel the guilt and set boundaries anyway. Guilt is just old programming telling you your worth depends on usefulness. It's lying. People who genuinely care about you will respect boundaries. People who don't respect boundaries were taking advantage of your lack of them. That's information about them, not evidence you wronged. The rest integration. Virgo runs on stress hormones and ignores exhaustion until breakdown. Mid-January introduces strategic rest as performance enhancer, not weakness. Schedule actual rest, not just sleep but true recovery, downtime without productivity, leisure activities, nature time, creative play, or simply doing nothing without guilt. Treat rest appointments as seriously as work commitments. Track how rest affects your productivity, creativity, and decision-making quality. You'll probably discover that well-rested Virgo accomplishes more in less time with better quality than exhausted Virgo pushing through. The appreciation practice. Virgo focuses on what needs fixing while ignoring what's already good. This creates constant dissatisfaction and anxiety. Mid-January, practice appreciation of yourself, your work, your life, others, and simple pleasures. Daily practice. Before bed, write 3 things that went well, 3 things you did competently, 3 things you appreciate about yourself, 3 things you're grateful for. Specificity matters. Not just good day but handle that difficult conversation skillfully or remember to drink enough water. This feels silly and self-indulgent to Virgo. It's actually rewiring your brain to notice good alongside problems, progress alongside imperfections. The feedback reception. Mid-January might bring feedback, criticism of your work, suggestions for improvement, or people pointing out mistakes. This is your test. Virgo tends to spiral when criticized, taking it as evidence you're fundamentally inadequate, catastrophizing about implications, or ruminating for days. Instead, practice. Receive feedback neutrally. Thank you for the input. Evaluate objectively. Is this accurate and useful? If yes, use it to improve. If no, discard it. Either way, don't let it devastate you. Feedback is just information, not judgment of your worth. Even harsh or unfair criticism doesn't define you. Your worth is constant regardless of performance or others' opinions. The collaboration opportunity. Virgo often prefers working alone where you can control quality and don't have to deal with others' inferior standards. But collaboration brings diverse perspectives, shared workload, and creative synergy you can't achieve alone. Mid-January, seek or accept collaboration opportunity. Yes, others might not do things your way. Yes, you might need to compromise on some details. Collaborate anyway. Practice trusting others' competence, delegating without micromanaging, accepting different instead of insisting on your way, and sharing credit generously. You might discover that collaborative results, while different from what you'd do alone, are actually better in ways you couldn't have created solo. By January 20th, you should have completed and shared at least one project, practiced visibility, experimented with imperfection, implemented service boundaries, integrated real rest, practiced appreciation, received feedback without spiraling, and attempted collaboration. You should feel both vulnerable and liberated. That's growth. January 21st to 31st, integration, refinement, and sustainable excellence. The final third of January is when mid-month's growth either integrates into lasting change or fades as temporary enthusiasm. This is where you prove whether you're committed to releasing perfectionism or will slide back into familiar anxiety and self-criticism. Late January tests your commitment. Will you maintain boundaries when people push back? Will you continue sharing imperfect work when anxiety screams to hide? Will you keep resting when productivity guilt emerges? Will you sustain appreciation practice when your inner critic returns? Completion celebration. If you actually finish projects mid-month, celebrate this genuinely. Virgo rarely acknowledges accomplishments. You immediately move to the next thing or focus on what could have been better. Stop. Acknowledge what you finished. Recognize the effort it took. Appreciate the courage to share something imperfect. Let yourself feel proud. This reinforces completion behavior and builds evidence against perfectionism's lie that nothing you do is ever good enough. Also, notice, did sharing imperfect work create the catastrophe you feared? Or did people appreciate it despite flaws you obsessed about? This evidence matters more than your anxiety's predictions. The perfectionism pattern interruption. By now you've identified your main perfectionism patterns. Late January is when you actively interrupt them in real time. When perfectionism says don't start until conditions are perfect, start anyway. When it says this isn't good enough to share, share anyway. When it says you need to work on this more, stop and deliver it. When it says you made a mistake so you're inadequate, challenge this illogic. Create new mantras. Done is better than perfect. Good enough is good enough. My worth isn't conditional on perfect performance. I can make mistakes and still be valuable. Progress matters more than perfection. The worth reprogramming. Changing conditional worth beliefs requires consistent counterprogramming. Late January. Intensify practices that build inherent worth recognition, doing things purely for joy, not productivity or improvement, resting without guilt or justification, accepting help and care from others, maintaining boundaries even when it disappoints people, acknowledging your value independent of achievements, treating yourself with compassion when you make mistakes, recognizing that your existence has value regardless of usefulness. This feels indulgent and wrong to Virgo. It's actually healthy and necessary. The service sustainability. Boundaries you implemented mid-month need consistent maintenance. People who benefited from boundaryless you will probably push back, test limits, or make you feel guilty. Maintain boundaries firmly but kindly. I understand you're disappointed, but I'm not available for that. I care about you, and I need to prioritize my own well-being right now. That doesn't work for me. You don't owe extensive explanations. No is complete sentence. Healthy people respect boundaries. People who don't respect boundaries were taking advantage, and their displeasure is information, not evidence you're wrong. The rest sustainment. Strategic rest from mid-month needs to become ongoing practice, not temporary experiment. Schedule regular rest periods, daily downtime, weekly rejuvenation, monthly deeper recovery. When productivity guilt emerges, remind yourself, rest isn't laziness, it's recovery that enables sustained high performance. Exhausted Virgo is actually less productive, makes more mistakes, and produces lower quality work than rested Virgo. Rest serves your goals, not undermines them. The anxiety management. Anxiety patterns you identified early month need ongoing active management. Late January. Establish practices that work with anxiety rather than being controlled by it, naming anxiety when it arises. I notice anxiety rather than this is dangerous, reality checking anxious thoughts. Is this accurate or is anxiety catastrophizing? Grounding techniques when anxiety spikes. Breathing, physical sensation focus, movement limiting anxiety feeding behaviors, excessive planning, compulsive checking, reassurance-seeking therapy or counseling. If anxiety significantly impairs functioning, anxiety won't completely disappear. Virgo brains are wired to be vigilant, but you can develop healthier relationship with it where it informs but doesn't control. The health sustainment, improvements you made to health routines need to stick. Late January. Refine systems so they are sustainable, not just aspirational. Realistic routines you'll actually maintain. Long-term flexibility for imperfect days rather than all-or-nothing thinking. Focus on feeling good rather than perfect. Adherence to rules. Body-based wisdom over external prescriptions. Gentle consistency over intense perfectionism. Virgo often creates punishing health routines that are impossible to maintain, then feels like failure for not adhering perfectly. Create genuinely sustainable practices instead. The environment maintenance. If you improved your space mid-month, maintain it without perfectionist demands. Develop simple daily habits that keep space functional. 10-minute evening tidy, weekly deeper clean, regular decluttering, and systems for incoming items. Good enough maintenance beats perfect maintenance that's unsustainable and creates anxiety. Functional and pleasant beats showcase perfect but exhausting to maintain. Planning February realistically. As January closes, plan February based on January's lessons. What practices need to continue? What momentum deserves attention? What weaknesses still need work? Crucial for Virgo, plan realistically, not aspirationally. Account for imperfect days, unexpected challenges, and your actual energy and capacity. Build in buffer time and margin for error. Overplanning and under-delivering creates anxiety and reinforces perfectionist belief that you're never doing enough. By January 31st, you should feel more self-accepting, less anxious, proud of completions, clearer about boundaries, rested yet productive, and confident in your actual abilities rather than anxious about perceived inadequacies. You shouldn't feel paralyzed by perfectionism, anxious constantly, depleted from overgiving, or harsh with yourself for not being perfect. Relationships deep dive. From fixing to accepting. Let's talk honestly about Virgo in relationships, because this is often where your analytical gifts become critical burdens and your helpfulness becomes controlling attempts to manage others' imperfections. Your relationship pattern probably looks like this. You meet someone and quickly assess their strengths and weaknesses. You see their potential, who they could become if they just fix certain things. You help them, organizing their life, solving their problems, offering advice, managing details they neglect. You believe you're being supportive and helpful. You expect them to improve, appreciate your help, and become the better version you've envisioned. But often what happens, they feel criticized, managed, and inadequate rather than supported. They resist your help because it comes with implicit message that they're not acceptable as they are. They either become dependent on you managing their life, or they leave because your constant improvement suggestions feel like rejection. Then you feel confused and hurt. You were just trying to help. Why did they take it negatively? Why aren't they grateful? Why didn't they make the obvious improvements you suggested? January 2026 is ending this pattern. For single Virgo, when you meet someone interesting, you'll immediately notice their flaws, weaknesses, and areas needing improvement. This is automatic for Virgo. Your mind scans for problems. Resist acting on these observations initially. Instead, notice their strengths, uniqueness, and what's actually working in their life. Practice accepting people as they are rather than evaluating them as projects needing improvement. Asking yourself, do I actually like this person as they are currently, or am I attracted to who they could become if they changed? If you only like their potential, not their reality, move on. You can't build relationship on foundation of trying to change someone. Real love accepts people as they are while supporting their self-directed growth, not imposing your vision of who they should be. Also notice, are they asking for your help and advice? Or are you offering unsolicited? Most people experience unsolicited advice as criticism, not support. Wait to be asked, then offer suggestions gently and back off if they're not interested. For coupled Virgo, you've been with your partner for months or years. January asks hard questions. Do you accept them as they are? Or are you constantly trying to improve, fix, or change them? Do you appreciate their strengths, or focus primarily on their weaknesses? Do you offer support they actually want, or help they haven't requested and don't appreciate? Stop the improvement project. Your partner isn't a flawed version of ideal. They're a complete person who is acceptable exactly as they are. If you can't accept them currently, without changes, then this might not be right relationship. This doesn't mean accepting genuinely problematic behavior, but it does mean accepting personality traits, preferences, and life approaches that are different from yours even if you think your way is better. Practice complimenting more than criticizing, appreciating what they do well rather than only noticing what needs improvement, accepting their way of doing things even when it's not your way, and keeping unsolicited advice to yourself. The critical communication trap. Virgo communication often includes criticism disguised as help. If you just, you should, why don't you? The problem is, that's not the best way. These feel like helpful suggestions to you. They feel like rejection and criticism to recipients. Practice different communication, appreciation, acceptance, curiosity rather than fixing. I appreciate how you. I love that about you. Tell me more about why you. Ugh, that's an interesting approach. If you genuinely need something to change in relationship, communicate need clearly without making it character criticism. I need more help with housework, not your lazy and don't notice mess like I do. I'd like us to spend more quality time together, not you never prioritize me. The anxiety projection. Virgo anxiety often gets projected onto partners. You worry about their choices, their health, their plans. You try to manage their life to reduce your anxiety. You give unsolicited advice to feel like you're preventing problems. Recognize, your partner's life is theirs to manage. Your anxiety about their choices is yours to manage, not theirs to fix by changing their behavior. You can express concerns once, respectfully, then let it go. Repeatedly trying to control their choices to manage your anxiety damages trust and connection. The receiving challenge. You help, support, and serve in relationships, but do you receive equally? Can you let partners help you? Can you ask for what you need? Can you be vulnerable about struggles? Can you accept care without immediately reciprocating to discharge obligation? Virgo often gives compulsively but receives awkwardly. Receiving feels uncomfortable, like being burdened, being vulnerable, being imperfect. Practice accepting help, sharing needs, and allowing yourself to be cared for. Reciprocal relationships require both giving and receiving. The perfection performance. Are you being authentic in relationships? Or performing perfection, hiding flaws, pretending you have everything together, never admitting mistakes or struggles? Authentic intimacy requires showing your full self, competent and incompetent, strong and weak, having answers and being confused. Practice vulnerability, admitting when you don't know, sharing when you're struggling, asking for help when you need it, showing emotions including negative ones, being imperfect without apologizing for existing. By January 31st, your relationship should feel more accepting, less critical, more reciprocal, deeper, and based on genuine connection rather than improvement projects. They shouldn't feel like you're managing others, constantly disappointed by others' imperfections, or performing perfection instead of being authentic. Career mastery, precision without paralysis professionally. January 2026 is about leveraging your considerable analytical and organizational gifts while not being paralyzed by perfectionism or buried under others' work because you're too helpful. Virgo career strengths are real. You're detail-oriented, analytical, organized, quality-focused, reliable, excellent at process improvement, good at spotting problems before they escalate, and skilled at creating systems and order from chaos. Virgo career challenges are also real. You might be perfectionistic to point of paralysis, overly critical of self and others, take on too much work trying to be helpful, work yourself to exhaustion, undersell your value, avoid visibility, or neglect strategic vision while obsessing over details. January is when you leverage strengths while addressing challenges. Strategic completion over perfect process. Virgo often gets lost in perfecting process, never reaching completion and delivery. You refine, tweak, and improve endlessly without declaring anything done. Shift focus, what needs to be completed and delivered. Work toward completion at good enough quality, not endless perfection. Set specific completion deadlines. When deadline arrives, deliver what you have even if you see ways to improve it. Professional success requires completing and delivering, not working forever on projects that never launch. Your 80% is better than most people's 100%. Trust this. Visibility and credit. Your excellent work often goes unnoticed because you don't advocate for yourself or claim credit. Others might even take credit for your contributions while you silently resent this. Change this. Document your contributions and accomplishments. Share your work publicly when appropriate. Speak up about your ideas and insights in meetings. Put your name on your work. Ask for recognition you deserve. And correct people who take credit for your efforts. This isn't bragging. It's appropriate self-advocacy. Hiding your light doesn't serve you or anyone else. Boundary setting around helping. Virgo often becomes workplace dumping ground. The person everyone comes to when they need help, have questions, or want someone else to handle details they don't want to deal with. This feels good to your need to be useful, but it prevents you from doing your actual priority work and leads to exhaustion and resentment. Set boundaries. I can't help with that right now. That's outside my role. You'll need to figure that out yourself. Or I can help, but not until next week. Not every problem is yours to solve. Not every person needs your help. Prioritize your own work over constant helpfulness. Detail versus big picture balance. Virgo naturally focuses on details, which is valuable, but can miss strategic big picture. Practice zooming out regularly. What's the goal? What's the priority? What actually matters? Then let details serve strategy rather than becoming ends in themselves. Also recognize, not every detail matters equally. Perfect is enemy of done. Sometimes good enough on minor details while excelling on important elements is strategically smarter than perfect on everything. Handling criticism and feedback. Professional criticism triggers Virgo's deepest fears, being inadequate, making mistakes, not being good enough. You might spiral, catastrophize, or work even harder trying to prove you're perfect to avoid future criticism. Develop healthier relationship with feedback. Receive it neutrally. Evaluate its accuracy objectively. Use valid feedback to improve. Discard invalid feedback without internalizing it. Recognize that even harsh criticism doesn't define your worth, and understand that everyone receives criticism. It's normal part of professional growth, not evidence of inadequacy. Realistic workload. Virgo often takes on more than humanly manageable, partly from difficulty saying no, partly from believing you should be able to handle anything. This leads to exhaustion, decreased quality, and burnout. Assess realistically, what can you actually accomplish with the time and energy you have? Prioritize ruthlessly. Delegate what others can do. Decline what doesn't fit. Accept that you're human with limits, not machine that should handle infinite input. Asking for appropriate compensation. You probably undersell your value, offering expertise cheap or free, not negotiating, or accepting being underpaid because you're uncomfortable claiming your worth. Research what your skills should command. Document your value and results. Ask for raises or charge appropriate rates. Recognize that undervaluing yourself financially often reflects deeper belief that you're not quite good enough to charge what you're worth. What to avoid professionally. Don't get lost in perfecting details while missing deadlines or strategic priorities. Don't take on everyone's work while your own suffers. Don't hide your contributions or let others take credit. Don't work until breakdown trying to prove you're valuable through perfect performance. Don't accept being underpaid or undervalued out of misplaced humility. By January 31st professionally, you should have completed and delivered meaningful work, gained visibility for contributions, set healthy work boundaries, balanced detail focus with strategic thinking, handled criticism without spiraling, and advocated for appropriate compensation. You should feel competent, appropriately valued, and sustainably productive rather than perfectionist, invisible, and exhausted. Final integration. Becoming the liberated Virgo you're meant to be. January 2026 wasn't just a month, it was liberation from perfectionism prison. You've done brave work releasing impossible standards, accepting your inherent worth, sharing imperfect creations, setting healthy boundaries, and treating yourself with the compassion you readily extend to others. This is profound transformation. Virgo doesn't change patterns easily. You're fixed earth, naturally resistant to change, especially when it requires being vulnerable, imperfect, or less than excellent. But you've done it. Honor this courage. By January 31st, honest reflection. Perfectionism evolution. Is perfectionism's grip loosening? Can you start things before conditions are perfect? Can you share work that's good enough rather than flawless? Can you tolerate imperfection without spiraling? Worth recognition. Are you beginning to recognize your inherent worth? Can you separate your value from your performance? Can you accept yourself on imperfect days? Can you rest without guilt? Completion ability. Did you actually finish and share something? How did it feel to deliver imperfect work? Did the catastrophe you feared materialize? Or did people appreciate it despite flaws you obsessed about? Boundary sustainability. Have you maintained boundaries around helping and service? How have people responded? Who respected boundaries? Who pushed back? What did this teach you? Self-compassion progress. Can you treat yourself with kindness when you make mistakes? Or does harsh self-criticism still dominate? What helps you access self-compassion? Look ahead to February with realistic hope. Based on January's foundation, what practices need to continue? What growth edges still need attention? What will help you sustain these changes when life gets challenging? Anticipate perfectionism traps, high-pressure situations, visible projects, potential criticism, or exhaustion can all trigger old patterns. Plan how you'll handle these moments based on January's growth. Most importantly, recognize that excellence and self-acceptance aren't opposites. You can maintain high standards while accepting imperfection. You can strive for quality while recognizing your inherent worth. You can work hard while also resting. You can be competent while also being human. You're Virgo. You're built for precision, analysis, service, and creating order from chaos. January 2026 showed you how to embody these gifts from self-acceptance rather than from perfectionism and anxiety. Now sustain what you've built. The precision remains. The standards stay high, but the harsh self-criticism softens. The paralysis lifts. The anxiety quiets. And you discover that good enough, done, and shared creates far more impact than perfect, never finished, and hidden. Virgo, I need to hear from you. What's the ONE project you're committing to completing this month even if it's not perfect? Or what's the ONE perfectionism pattern you're releasing? Drop it in the comments. Declaring it publicly creates accountability and makes it real. And listen, if this reading spoke to your analytical mind and perfectionist heart, if you felt called out in ways that stung but needed to be said, if you're ready to release impossible standards and embrace your inherent worth, then do 3 things right now. Hit that like button so other Virgos can find this liberation roadmap. Subscribe so you never miss cosmic guidance designed for your precise, caring soul. And turn on notifications so February's forecast reaches you immediately. Also, share this with your Virgo friends, family, or loved ones. They need this permission to be imperfect too. Send it to that Virgo who never finishes anything because it's not perfect enough, who criticizes themselves relentlessly, who gives until depleted. January 2026 is Virgo's month to prove that the most detail-oriented, quality-focused sign can create excellent work while accepting that perfect is impossible and good enough is truly enough. Are you ready to be free?